I got the course materials up next week for you. I just got them together. So they'll be ready to go shortly after the class. That's some of the good news. I also went to the Suzzallo Library to do a little research. God, what a great thing that is. Go to the library. I have this idea for the Theosoph they call it the Seattle Theosophical Library,
Mm.
Theosophy, which is based in Wheaton, Illinois, Emily, right there. They have the world headquarters of it in Wheaton, yes, of all places.
Wow.
And they've had this building for, I think, 100 years, at least 100 years, and have had events in this library for 100 years. 99, I think. I think it's 100 years next year. And I was in there and thinking, wow, what if we gathered a group like this, went to the library, there were some opening comments, little Q&A about what was called for, read a poem to get people primed for it, and then say, okay, you've got 5 minutes to pick out a book or two from the library, and then you got a half an hour to write something. And then we'll come back. If you want to share, you can share. If you don't want to, wouldn't that be a cool thing? I mean, I was looking
So
at the Dancing Woolly Masters by Fritjof Capra and all kinds of other things, and
mhm.
just take advantage of the library vibe because I did that today looking at Ronald Johnson. $100 to buy the shrubberies. Little book like this. How about this? Well, this size. $100. I'm sorry. I don't have $100 for that. I think I could have read the whole thing. I didn't. I got distracted writing things and getting our exercise for next week. But if you guys have it, and then the silence was so amazing in this place.
Yeah.
You go up, take an elevator, go through the PS stack, find the stuff, find your little spot. They've got even a little light up there. And then I had like 2 hours of glorious silence. And then these girls were next to me. And I mean, it's loud. It's not as loud as half the shit that happens here, but I was so used to that silence and I just had to get up. I didn't give him the stink eye. I just got up, moved all my shit, my jacket and all, moved over and finished my stuff. But amazing. So that was my morning.
But
Um,
but Paul, you didn't have your typewriter with you.
I did not. True. It's true. I had the good sense to leave the typewriter. It's loud. I bang loud enough on this Mac for crying out loud. I was typing during a Zoom meeting and they're like, Paul, could you mute yourself if you're going to type during our meeting? Very, very poor form. Poor form. So anyway, here we are, week 4. And God, when the weather gets like this, it's oof,
Oh
so
yeah.
nice. Here, so nice in Seattle. I think 72 degrees. Just perfect weather. I left the house, it was 50, so I brought a coat. I felt very old and out of place wearing the coat home, but what are you going to do? Scott, I'm delighted that you're here.
Yeah, I've got a terrible head cold, so I don't, but I wanted to show up. So here I am. Thank you.
Yeah. Glad you're here.
Were I there, I would offer you a Hall's mentholyptus.
Hmm.
Carry him around in my pocket. Um, okay, we're ready to go. Gonna go. You okay, Jennifer?
Yes.
You have 3 new poems, so do you want to start today?
I do. You want me to?
I do.
I will.
I do.
Okay. I got swept away with Federico Garcia Lorca, and
Oh,
I
good.
really just his 9 poems blew me away, and just kind of inspired me everywhere. And he was I don't know. I just can't new American poetry, but it's not. I don't know. It was new to me, but I want to read something of my own. But he wrote a how that night bird hoots, how it calls from its branches. The moon traverses the night sky, leading the boy by the hand. And then from Battle of the Civil Guard, he wrote the bottles of cognac huddle back and wait it out on the shelves. So there's this passion. And then comedy with the old lizard. He wrote he wrote about this man that literally came across to him as if it was like a lizard person, and kind of made fun of him and stuff. It was super funny. But I don't know. I haven't written anything in a long time, so I'm super shy about it. I've been kind of busy not doing anything but reading. Um, could you bear with me?
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
No, 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 no.
I'm
No,
taking so long. Okay, I wrote this kind of as a retrospect, but also kind of hoping to do differently with the future, as it's called Shadows, but I am queerless, my older self seeking quiet, avoiding shame. The vase of flowers I acknowledge without recollections, for they require inventory, pulling me from the sash being thrown open, where the falling dust parts from the sun.
you seem to and be inspired by Lorca.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that before that, but I'm going to continue reading him, and I found it really hard to find anything on, gosh, what was there? Oh, the Phyllis Webb.
Yes.
I couldn't find any poems really in the naked poems. I felt like I had to go hunt them down and buy them or something. And I'm so absolutely interested in her work. One of the poems that hit me so much was "You took will such gentleness, my dark." And she wrote, "In the bruise, again you have left your mark, or we have, skin shuddered secretly."
Did you read the poems that were in the PDF?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
'Cause-
did.
yeah, that's where we kind of caught up with her, the whole Wilson's Bowl thing. Yeah.
The Wilson's Bowl thing is amazing. It actually was kind of cool that it led to this poet out of this. She's referring to a petroglyph, a circular, whatever. She's referring to something archaeology based, and at the same time, the naked poems I read as many as I could find. They were great.
Yeah. Phyllis Webb was a very important person. I had a chance to go to her book release party for the last book that she put out, which was a collected.
Yeah.
What's that called? Peacock Blue, and didn't go. And within, I think, 2 years of that, she'd passed away.
Oh, that's so sad.
That's the way it goes. You mentioned something about shame. I think about Lorca, and I think about Allen Ginsberg, and I think about people who had the potential to experience a great deal of shame and yet found a way to make their mark on this planet in such a way that they're going to be remembered for a long time, mostly for good reasons. And Alan said something very interesting. He said, candor ends paranoia. So I think if we go into our own shameful episodes and we write about them with in a way that has is candor and not in any kind of oh look at me in a way, not any victim consciousness in a way, but that it's
No.
part of you, then I think people can't hold it over your head because you've already written it, you've exposed it yourself. So I think about Michael McClure writing, "Now I understand the sexual addiction of my young manhood was a crucifixion." glittering,
Oh, wow.
lovely,
That's amazing.
glittering and lovely as a uh, ostrich boa and smashed mirrors seen on acid.
Oh my gosh, that's so
I
crazy.
read that and I think, he put it out there. So he's admitting that. Sam Hamill admitted that he was a batterer and then went to work with women who had fled abusive partners. So he made penance for that. And I think it made the world a better place that he was able to admit that and to do something to compensate, or he did something to, in a way, it was that was his way of apologizing. So I think that the whole shame thing, and I know you just alluded to it, if we can come clean about these things or admit them somehow, it doesn't even mean write them in a poem and read them in a workshop. It just means to write them, I think. We find that a lot of that dissolves, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think I wrote it. It was just a real, um, full circle situation kind of for me because I've lived in this all through my 20s and 30s. I was living through these horrible, like shameful places, and all of a sudden through my 40s and now I'm 50, everything is different, and I'm allowed to let myself live for myself, and not let those things be quite a influence on my life.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Some wisdom today.
Thank you for everything. This has been an experience.
Mm.
I'm
Thanks.
glad you're here. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jennifer. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to go next?
I don't necessarily, but I just wanted to add another poet who really worked through shame, and his writing was Clayton Eshelman. And
Is that so? What
I
shameful
would say, well,
things?
I just opened his essential poetry up and come to, I've been given this black hat of internal anger, still on the hot radiator. To sit here, you look at me, I'm riding on my anger as men did. Horses drove in the spurs, straddling the trunk of energy the mind is heir to. It bubbles. And he goes on, he just built with like, his, the depth of his, his contorted Illinois sexuality, Indiana sexuality. Uh, I'd say, the bulk of his early work is just driven by an attempt to come to terms with his shame and sexual self-loathing. And then he goes into the whole underworld, working literally into the caves to process. I think Esselman has really worked with shame a great deal.
What's his name again, Scott?
Clayton Eshelman.
Blayton.
He was the editor of two very significant poetry mags, Caterpillar and Sulphur, and pulled together some amazing work over the years. A remarkable poet himself, many volumes. I can lend you some if you want to next time I see you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him at all.
Translator too.
Yeah, Major Vallejo and others, but Vallejo in particular. Cool.
Well, Scott, why don't you just check in while you're at it?
Sure, it's been a strange couple of weeks. Um, yeah. um, where to begin? Talked with a surgeon yesterday, so I'm dealing with decisions around next steps, and I think it's coming clearer. Talked to my naturopath today, who was very helpful, wonderful guy. So that's coming together. Didn't sleep much last
Wait,
night.
wait, wait,
Have it,
wait. Surgery? You were getting some
yeah, for
other
the melanoma. So they're going to take out my inguinal lymph node, and the question was whether they would take the whole thing out or just bits and pieces. So the standard practice is to take it all. And the main problem there is developing lymphedema and swelling. But again, I, again, in conversation with my naturopath, I think that's probably not a problem. So anyway, decisions.
Yeah.
That's the deal. Working on that. Anyway, might come up with some writing. I'm thinking about John Giorno. I don't know, did you come across he wrote a really phenomenal piece way back, early 1970s, Cancer in My Left Ball, I think it was called. And he really he worked that one. That was good. So we'll see.
You're not
Anyway,
going to
so
read it for us, though. You're just going to let that one hang there.
yeah, I don't have it, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But so
I
I've been
never,
dealing with that and cold, didn't sleep last night. Went to a open mic scene last night, and I was just like, again, kind of painful being there and listening to poetry as self-expression. Um, it's like, oh, I kind of wonder, why do I go to these things? Because it's just painful. Anyway, I read a couple things.
what was the venue?
It was at the Abbey, Paul,
Uh,
and they've fixed the porch.
Very good. Oh,
So
good. Good.
it's really very nice, beautiful cedar, clean grained cedar. So it's looking good. So it was the Abbey, and it was a so-called um, showcase for some of the people who have been meeting here in Cumberland. And I don't know, sparsely attended, but again, and it was combination. There were a few people with ukuleles and others reading. Um, but yeah, as I say, kind of painful.
How was your work received?
Um, I think it was received well. Again, I read the one piece, Adorno, about the medics who were assassinated. And it flies in the face of most of what is presented. And we were conversation going into it. Um, the person who was doing the emceeing said, "Well, we've decided that if you've got anything heavy, we want you to warn people, so it's like trigger warning, so they can leave the room." Okay, so I gave him the trigger warning. Nobody left, and again, it seemed well received. Oh my God. Anyway, so I read a couple pieces. Um, and I've written a few as I was um, looking at this week's material. I'll pull a couple of them up. Just a kind of combination reflection on Wilson's Bowl material and a little bit of moving into the Duende. Um, and as usual, the 2 weeks resources led me into some wonderful terrain. I'm continuing to delve into the cantos. Uh, and again, Jennifer, actually thinking about you and as I was reading After Lorca by Spicer, which is such an interesting take and approach on Lorca's work. So in these couple of things, I'll pull them up here if I can. Mm, yeah. So these are just a couple of offbeat pieces that came up reading this week's material. New images for the two hands of God. Who is Raven? No creation, only transformation. This is not a bowl you drink from. Easter Sunday, 2025. A lesson from saddened America. Hegseth hath no duende. Rain falls but does not hurt itself. May tyrants hide in pig shit. If a black bird is punctured, if rain falls putrid, why doth your heart cry? The spirits are not benign. Crystal beings stalk the mountain, the spectrum of light. April 20. So you see, some of you will notice some of the quotations in here running from Phyllis's work. A force, not a labor, a struggle, not a thought, wave, snuggle, most ancient culture of immediate creation. Cenote begat pyramid, begat cenote, spun from fire, from ash, the singing of drunken sailors falling overboard. Angels beat their wings of steel, muse, with tired heart radio eaten suddenly by ants, light and form. The true struggle is with the duende, the eyes of a dead fish at dawn, entrails dragged off the trail, barnacle bone, sea asparagus, not form but the marrow of form, wings made of rusty knives, the living flesh more alive when dead, the obvious tribes of salmon, salal. That was on Easter Sunday. And then this little one. Dream report from the manosphere. I'm going to learn vegan, mystic, and Nazi kung fu. To be surprised, surprised. Don't tell me what I always know. Where does it come from? A frozen sun with no clothes on, and one who rides a tiny horse across the tundra, screaming with joy. Birthday plus one.
If you could go up to that line with tired heart radio. No, no, go a little up a little higher. With tired heart radio eaten suddenly by ants. It feels like a very Lorca kind of
Mm.
surreal kind of image, which is fantastic. Works so well in this. You talk about surprise mind, how hard it is to get. And no, if you can go back up closer to the top, in the first poem that you read, okay, there we go. So it is the line, may tyrants hide in big shit. I mean, it's this notion of trying to, and first of all, I shouldn't say trying because every week that you present material, you have it. You have it's contemporary, it's news that stays news, and yet it doesn't fall into if I had a rocket launcher, some son of a bitch would die or whatever. However you want to put that impulse, that pure anger. And the so to be able to slide in a line like that, may tyrants hide in pig shit, it's exactly what I think all of us are feeling. And yet, uh, I tried my attempt at writing something contemporary about what was going on, and I read it to Bhakti, and she wasn't quite shaking her head, but she was just 1 degree short of just shaking her head, like, that's not even a poem. Why is it a poem? It's a poem because it has surprise. It's a poem because it's not mired in this is what I think. I just week after week, Scott, this is really, really brilliant what you come up with. And I'm really grateful that sometimes I think you ought to be teaching this class, but I'm really grateful that you're in it and provide that. The fact that Hegseth hath no duende, I mean, we would, in 99% of circumstances, we would say, speak with in the demotic, in the common speech, use of common speech in poetry. But because it's Hegseth, you to use hath is that kind of melopoeia that happens. And the fact that he has no duende. You want to elaborate on that line? I think that line is just fantastic. So here's the core lesson from putting the Lorca essay out there. Do you know what duende is? Are you aware that we're living in a time that's steeped with duende? Can you, as a poet and as a human being, somehow go beyond, transcend that strong desire to have a poem with all lines like "May tyrants hide in big shit"? So tell us about that line. Hegseth hath no duende.
Ah, Yeah, when I was thinking about them, I mean, there's so many of these just, I don't know who they are and what they are that I could have referred to, but Hegseth sort of stands out as a, as being particularly shallow and
Defensive.
just I mean, I just noticed the latest was he put out money in to fit out some space in the Pentagon for a makeup studio.
Yes. On one hand, they're trying to oppose drag queens. On the other hand, they're becoming drag queens.
So, it's like none of them seem to have a capacity for, any sense of depth or reflection, and it's like that. The duende is like that struggle with, you know, the, the passion, the interweaving of death and love, and just, and there's just none of it. It's just like flat land. So it's, that's where it comes from.
Fantastic. It's so fantastic. Such a great line. Yeah, I was reading one of the Substack guy. I think it was Daniel Pinchbeck actually, and talking about how he's preparing to move to Europe because of what's happening here.
Mhm.
And I understand why people do that, but you know, I don't I don't think it's right. I think it's the geographical cure. Just moving to Europe, you're just going to create other problems. It seems to me. Who'd had a comment about the half? Lorraine, you want to say it out loud, Lorraine?
I like the music of the Hegseth and Hath as well, but I was also thinking that uh, it becomes sort of a like a commandment or something biblical, and especially because it's used again a few lines down, I think. So then there's authority, but in a slightly ironic way, I think,
No.
especially because it's followed by pig shit.
Yeah. Yes, and I agree with Emily. Not form, but the marrow of form. Fantastic, just fantastic. Oh my God, I'm glad you're here. I hope for the best with your surgery. You don't have a date yet, though, right? No.
May
Oh,
16th.
you do have a date, May 16th.
Maybe, yeah.
Friday, May
We talk
16th.
again Tuesday, Monday, and sort that out, which is kind of a drag because I was going to be doing that weekend with Martin Shaw, looking at the Grail Parsifal, which was so appropriate with the the wound in the groin of the Fisher King.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate. But this takes precedent.
Well,
So,
the best thing will happen, I'm sure. Thanks, Scott. Emily, would you be so kind as to go next? Then we'll have Aaron and
I absolutely will. Yeah.
oh, good.
So as far as the readings, nobody's mentioned the bracket fungus yet, who I find very interesting. Um, and so,
Elaborate, please.
well, I have to admit that the reading was a little confusing if you had no knowledge of the bracket fungus going in, which I think many of us probably didn't.
Right.
Um, so I had to go back and go out of the reading and read about it in order to come back and understand the reading. And look at look at images of the other plates and kind of figure it out. But, I just think, I mean, it's, it has this mythic quality. I love that it brings in sort of male and female and sexuality, but that there's this comic element to it. I mean, it's got so much going on. And the fact that, it was a bracket fungus, for goodness sakes, it's almost like someone was just having kind of a good joke, you know.
Exactly. I mean, a ribald sense of humor without
Yes.
any Puritan kind
No,
of affect
no.
or whatsoever. There's a
And
book
it
by
wasn't
Paul.
in the picture of the one, in the book, but the one where he's like, basically about to fall out of the boat because he's having the orgasmic, features. So kind of interesting. And then I love the take that where the female tribe members, or I can't remember if it was grandmother, whoever it was, but had passed on a story that was told, passed on more by the female part of the tribe, and that involved a lot more female empowerment than sort of the other alternate telling of the story. So I like that it can have nuances both ways. So that I found totally interesting. I found the Wilson Bowl interesting, although I don't know, I guess interesting, and then also mixed with sort of that weird dual tragedy, mixed into that story too. So that, added a heaviness to the whole thing. And then nobody's mentioned the Socratic method, but I think, you brought up a little bit with Scott's piece that, I'm doing this like poem a day thing. And so I read a lot of people's work every day. Um, and what I find is that, there are people, and I know they're struggling, but things will come out that are just literally lists of all the things they hate. You know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm worried about this. This sucks. This is bad. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like Gaza and Trump and, I mean, like all just list, but there's no grappling. There's no internal work that's done with it. And I think that maybe is sort of the difference there,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, many of them do it, but there are a few people that have not moved beyond the listing.
Right. I mean, I think that Yeats quote is key. I mean,
Yeah.
let's think about that. You could ask that about 90% of the poems you hear. Scott could have asked that after every poem he heard at the open mic. Marion Kime said to me, Paul Nelson, what is your commitment to beauty? That could be something you would ask all the hate list poem people.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard because we are all having, you know what I mean? This is difficult times. And so we all have our lists. It's just that, you know, I mean, is it a therapy session or is it a poem kind of, you know what I mean? Or both. I don't know.
Preach, girl.
All right. Maybe that came out meaner than I meant, but I didn't mean it to be.
No, it wasn't mean. It was
Okay.
direct. And those are I think they're two different things. Can poetry be therapeutic? Yes, it can. Should you use poetry as therapy? Yes, you can. Is that the highest and best manifestation of poetry? I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah, so let's see. So as far as sharing, let me see. I had planned, I thought, to read a little myth, way more PG, 100% PG. But I think I'll read, I've got a few little shorts, but I think I'll read this one instead of the myth because it's a little bit in response to Jennifer's thing. And if you think about sort of candor, along with this poem, I think you'll see why it relates. Resolve. The trees do not care about stories, but they insist on truth, bare barked or leafy, rooted or reaching for sky. Somewhere within the many branches of your story, sing at least one thing true, enough to convince the trees.
To that. Fantastic.
Let's see, this is the Duende poem. And this poem, just to explain a little bit about every now and again, so instead of like stealing, like I'll go through and I'll pick some words from a piece. So I just pick some words from a few paragraphs and then wrote to them, for the next thing. And it sometimes, I'm not sure if this completely makes sense, but it often leaves me with poems that at least leave an impression, if that makes sense, rather than logical sense. So this is Dance of Duende. This year we are dancing. Some of us wear skirts and waltz, remembering Chopin and the time before the war. Others bare-chested leap and stomp to a frenzied rhythm, music dark as mahogany, bleak as battle. We all have our roots in struggle, a force pulling us through centuries, moving our feet to strange tunes, calling us to sing our songs jubilant and filled with the affliction of being. Pursue life, we chant, our leather soles echoing over boards of hemlock. We consider circles and the brown scope of time, and time puts on another new body, unsure whether to shudder or to dazzle us as the music raises itself up.
Mhm.
So,
Brown scope of time. Yeah. Do
yeah.
they listen to you in these classes? Do you tell them what you told us? Maybe not.
No,
You don't.
goodness, no. I
No.
give them likes and positive feedback because a lot of these people are just, some of them are writing poems for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Some, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. But
They,
when you read, do they pay attention?
there's no reading. This is all online posting. So it's just to keep you accountable. And then you read their poems and leave, positive feedback.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. But
So, and this is the last one I'm going to read is my favorite one from the week. It may not be for this group, their favorite, but this is has some aspects I think this group will still like. The stars are not gods, but are lost souls, by which I mean they are foremost balls of gas and molecules, orbs keeping watch on creation, on birth and vanishing, on dark matter and those unruly quarks with their intimate strangeness. As time-worn observers, they are godlike, so we gather them into names and stories. To our eyes, they hold the sky with small stitches of a needle through black fabric. When someone dies, we look toward the stars, almost never thinking of atoms or the impossible heat of fission, but instead wondering at loss and the night sky and the multitude of holes through which souls have escaped the earth.
hmm, nice bit of assonance there in the last two lines. Fantastic. I was reminded of Malidoma Somé, who wrote Of Water and the Spirit. Did a lot of workshops with Michael Mead. I don't know, Scott, if you've come across his work, but he's got this great telling of an African funeral after they do the Catholic funeral. And I think I got from that book that the energy that the dead use to get to the next world is the energy that we expend grieving for them, right? And so that's what I felt when I was hearing that. Fantastic. Well, all of this practice helping, must be helping you to be very creative in this National Poetry Month.
Yeah. Today, I admit I was really tired and I wrote some really silly American sentences. So, you know,
That's on the list for next week. Next week is a respite from all
uh,
this may they die in their own pig shit kind of poems, or
yeah,
however you want to say it. Well, good. You don't want to share one of them? Well, you can share them next week because we'll be.
no, I'll read one. Just let's see. They were supposed to be about a food we don't eat. So let's see. Yeah, I'll read two. Gluten, devil for some. I worship at the bakery down the block. Uh, Not one for absolutes. I've sworn off vodka on some Tuesdays with rain. So totally irreverent, silly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have a range. That's important to show. I think having being able to sing short, which is sort of what next week's workshop exercise is about, to sing short along with these longer things, I think is essential to practice, have those long muscles and short muscles going on. Emily, I'm glad you're part of this work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like being with this group. Inspiring.
Yeah, the brown scope of time. That sounded very Lorca. Lorca, an example of, he didn't survive the fascists, right? There are people who aren't going to survive. And so far, the Trump administration is nothing close to Franco, right? I mean, I'm not trying to say it's not as bad, so it's okay. It's horrible. But there are people in the past, and next week's one of next week's course materials is going to get very deeply into that. All right, we're going to go Aaron, Lorraine, and Lauren in that order. Aaron O'Brien. Welcome, welcome. How you doing?
Hello. Good. I've had a I had an overwhelming week, so I mainly just got to the materials today, although I had read the Wilson's Bowl section all before. So um, um, I really enjoyed how there was a lot of interreference um, between things, and that is what I'm working with in my writing that I'm really excited about. I am a big fan of Anne Carson's poetry, and she does a lot of things that something that's always inspired me is she often takes two writers or philosophers and has conversations between them, like different people from different times and whatever, and then adds her own thing, and I really love putting things together like that. And so today I watched the Wilson's Bowl panel, and I when I went through the readings, I wrote down quotes and I pulled out like what I had underlined in the book, and um and there was a lot of, so in the panel, Stephen and Daphne and Fred are all, they're reading Phyllis's work. They're also frequently quoting Wilson Duff. And then it was cool reading the Lorca essay and seeing how Phyllis Webb had quoted Lorca. And I'm kind of excited by all that. Like there's this big, rich conversation going on. And I think I really started getting this sense of, everybody doing the hinting towards this mystery that can't be defined. It's like the more you say about it, the more there is this kind of swirling mystery. And yeah, so I think I didn't complete my poem that I'm working on. I'm also really excited by the concept of the duende. As I read about that, I glanced at the Wikipedia thing, and I actually printed it out, and I was like, oh, this is so rich and fascinating. And I printed out the Lorca essay. I didn't read the whole thing from start to finish because I didn't have time for the whole thing. But what I did was I printed it and then I ripped it up into pieces. And then I looked at each piece and I took out phrases and I wrote down a whole bunch of things, and I was just like really happy with what I've got. So I added that to my list of quotes from the reading that I had done. So I think what I'm going to read is I've got 3 pages of quotes. And then what I began was picking the quotes out randomly and then doing a couple line response to each one. So I've just begun that part, but I think I'd like to read the quotes and then that part.
You go, girl.
Okay, let's hope I get this sharing right. This is it.
Okay. Yes, it's working. Okay. Can you see up here that it says,
Stephen Collis, Wilson Duff, Phyllis Webb, Garth
yeah,
Lane.
so they're color coded.
Yeah.
Okay. Siot Bol Duende. Siot was the name. Okay. Simply stand near the mystery. Nothing comes in pieces. There are, in fact, bowls carved in the bedrock of each and every harbor on Salt Spring in the south, Fulford Harbor, west, Burgoyne Bay, Quaquam, north, Hudson Point, and east, Ganges Harbor, Siot. Offerings in every cove, the island encircled in ceremony. I have gone beyond levels of meaning. It involves paradoxes. The art seems to be saying, I control paradox. How can something be formed out of nothing? There is no beginning of time. There only exists the present moment. Opposites intertransforming into each other. I think you will know intuitively. Lilo, who walked into the sea, Salt Spring. Show you nothing. Does not appear. Constant baptism. This is not a bowl you drink from. Spirit entered. Syllables, equations, radio waves for living and dead. By tides. Collaborating. Little songs. I took the signs. Turning on symbols. Against you. For the dance. Reading the lies of paradox. Daphne says, Wilson says, Raven says, that is you. I am you. The endless baptism of freshly created things. Gaze in loving wonder. Spirit enters. Everyone feels the effect. Duende loves the edge where forms fuse beyond visible expression. I went cutting roses looking for death. Why aren't you kissing me? The living flesh is needed to a ridiculous level, playing with his life, bitten by the duende. Newly created rose, mysterious force, descended from that blithe, salt melancholy. Great poet between two rituals. All who gaze 3 times entangling, every artist seeking the duende, we only know it burns. How can something be formed out of nothing? Take the fossils out of the freezer for dinner. We're forgetting and hungry. Why aren't you kissing me? If I get up at 3 a.m., I'll look at the stars and name them new names. Vega, Deneb, and Mirak choose new selves, fresh myth. Show you nothing. Before selfies, there were mirrors. Fleet, turn. It involves paradoxes. If I had no existence, but mother, one bathroom mirror, no reflection. Duende loves the edge where forms fuse, beyond visible expression. Scrying in the wash basin, crying in the porridge.
Fantastic. I love the constant baptism. Do you remember whose line that was? He said it a couple of different ways.
Yes, because Phyllis had said it, and that was a reference to Lorca.
Oh, is that right?
It was in the Phyllis Webb Duende poem.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? What a great line that is. And that it's just the whole Wilson Bowl thing, when you think of it in that way, constant baptism, how potent that is. You know, when you go for baptism or when people go for baptism, they go with an intention to start anew, to be washed clean, to be touched by spirit, however they define that. And that, it's that kind of intention that does the job. You're communicating directly with spirit as to intention. I think it was Jennifer who was talking about using poetry as some way to kind of create a different future, sort of a course correction in a way. And I think that notion of doing a baptism in whatever tradition, even though that refers to a sort of a Christian approach, but there are similarities in every religion. In Buddhism, when you do the jukai, they flick water at you with a brush. And I think that's a similar kind of sentiment. But this notion, constant baptism, and that you had the wherewithal to pull that one out, and fresh myth, and big, rich conversation, which I think is what Scott was getting at when he was critiquing the Cumberland open mic people. It's like,
Mm.
yes, you, sure, you, but how are you part of this big, rich conversation that's going on? That includes some difficult things and includes some lighter things. And if you're asking people to think about some horrific tragedy, it's not because you're trying to depress them. It's because you're trying to make them feel as human beings. These people go to the open mics and apologize for that. I'm sorry my stuff is such a downer. No, we're here not to be told how good things are. We're here to have an experience of human beings. And the greater our capacity for grief, the greater our capacity for joy. So I'm so grateful that you're getting this and expressing it in such a way. And I find those collage assemblies that you do compelling. I hope that you're enjoying the class. It seems to be transforming you. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think good things are happening for you in this work.
Yeah, for sure. It's like helping me bring my own pieces together.
Yeah. And you and Scott were talking about going to Wilson's Bowl. So is that on hold, or is that going to be before the 16th, or what's the plan for that?
Maybe.
Maybe.
We have a
I see.
we've been talking about it. We have a tentative plan.
We'll see.
I will be whizzing by it a week from Sunday, getting to Fanny Bay in time to host the Sunday workshop and get ready for Monday's activities. Monday the 5th. Monday the 5th, the 5th. That's right. Well, fantastic. I want to see what you guys do because we won't be meeting. I won't be hosting another workshop until the fall, so we won't be meeting. So these threads just kind of stop. So you'll have to keep me informed as to how this is all going. Yeah. That's your check-in?
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. Fantastic. Such a joy to see people running with this material. It's just, I get great pleasure out of it. If dinner is too close to the end of this thing, I'm still in the Zoom room thinking about all the things that have come up, and it's difficult for me to make the transition. And sometimes it lasts through dinner, and I'm still in the poetry mode, and I either create the next week's workshop exercises or do something like that. Fortunately, I've done them already today, so I don't have to be that. But and it's Ahi.
Yeah.
And it's Ahi tonight. So, beg pardon? Albacore. She does this thing where it's the furikake, furikake, and she kind of coats one side. Furikake is, what is it exactly? It's sesame and seaweed and salt, a little sugar. Anyway, she does a furikake, a little sears the tuna on each side, and you kind of raw in the middle. So probably can get them right by Wilson's Bowl. Although I wouldn't fish from there. No, it doesn't seem, I go to a different rock. While that one is having its constant baptism. I will never look at that bowl the same. And it's interesting how I've read this material, and I didn't pick that out. It took me to see it through someone else's eyes.
Mm.
That happened today as I was reading this Ronald Johnson stuff. I was reading it, and then for some reason, Googled something about it, came to Mark Scroggins writing about Ronald Johnson. He pointed out this line. I forget what it was. And I'm like, holy shit, why didn't I see that the first time I was reading it? So sometimes you need something else. I mean, I think that's why this class is helpful, because we're all reading the same material. We're all pulling different things, and it might have been stuff we missed. I think my problem is I'm a little ADD, so sometimes it doesn't really fully sink in, which I think it has its good and bad points. Does anyone need to go to the bathroom? Good. I'll keep hydrating. And Lorraine, are you ready? Well,
Yes, ready. I have I erased the Lorca essay, or I did an erasure exercise. So I'd like to read that. Um, and also, um, uh, oh, if it's okay, I'm quite fond of the whole erasing things practice, and I have a show and tell if that's okay for people from something previous that I did.
yes, it is. And
Okay.
I just want to say, dear Federico Garcia Lorca, even though you've been erased and shredded in this class, we still love you.
It helped. Yeah, anyway. So hang on. A few years ago, uh, I was there was sort of a challenge. I was given this book. It's a uh Sir Walter Scott novel called The Heart of Midlothian, and I erased it.
Hmm.
And so it's hard to read. I can pull up a page or two. Let's see. Um, somewhere, just a sec here. Oh, I wonder why. Hang
What is it that gives me such glee that people are erasing romantic poets?
on.
It says something about me, I think. Is that right? No.
So for some reason, the pages that are JPEGs don't show up in my um, things to share. So I'll just skip that. Um,
You had whet an
but
appetite.
yeah, um, it was great fun, and I took it all apart, and I ended up with sort of three layers of narrative, and it was just great. I decided that I would look for Sir Walter Scott's sense of place, so I went. I that was my guiding rule was anything to do, any words to do with environment or nature or that kind of thing. Um, and because there's a prison at the center of the novel, that's the heart of Midlothian is a prison. Anyway, I'll move on to uh, this thing. So I called it instead of where is Duende, here is Duende. Longing to enter sleep, sharp eyes, gleam of knives, saddened tributaries, someone who sang Andalusia. The old gypsy dancer plays dark sounds, deep, dark roots know of art. Dark sounds speak of force, a force, a struggle surges up alive in the veins. Ancient spirit of the earth, scorched, its outer form leapt headless, demon hurled jealousies in the Andalusian woods. Shudder, descend, all marble and salt, melancholy singing. Every step climbs perfection. The struggle at the root flies through the cracks, their light, their wings of steel, her heart destroyed. Poetry's enemy lifts the roses from outside, roused the blood. Forget fear, struggle. Thorns of fire burn glass, shatter with fists, bitumen black, naked in the cold, in the wastes, eyes of a dead fish at dawn on the boulevard. Think without possessing, and be not indifferent. Discover a little tavern of shadows, of beaten tin. She tangled it in her hair, abandoned it to dark, remained silent. How from fiery aristocrat or descended in her blood, who still sacrifice in the corner a Cretan mask, a little man dancing, something like a madwoman, trembling, fiery spirit, scorched throat. Tear down the song, burning winds heavy with sand. Listen, rhythm, tear apart the marrow of form, rob safety, banish, and be helpless. And how she sang, blood, pain, storm-filled change, the old unknowns, a new rose, an elegy, vigor of the fight. All the songs, deep cries, shake, escape, achieve the 7 gardens of tears, escape perfect in a dance, throwing back her head, stamping her foot, sweeping the earth with rusty knives, and die. Compose a new wonder, haunted melody, singing such rhythm, some new expression, art, ancient music and dance, squeeze dawn, open, ending. Close the curtains, open the day into the sun. Live anywhere on the edge. Death, silent dream of skulls, birth, blood, throw sparks, black pitch. I am dying. Bitter verse, lyric, cypress, wheel, razor, barren moon, wounding lines, weeds of illusion, a spirit memory rooted in sharp stones. Lament dances chants among the ballads, given to the dark below dawn, kiss in the rose tree, in the garden, mother, I shall die. Moon-frozen yellows, lightning work in which the dead sing their flame-bright torches in the night, dance and chant the dark, endless festival of death, grasp an urn, an epitaph, return to silence beneath the broken shadows, circle with tears of ice, trembling. The possibility of death can haunt the struggle on the edge of the pit. Wounds that never heal. Try to heal the strange poem filled with dark water. Struggle the entangling. 3 times one creature pierced her living flesh, living cloud, living ocean of time. Vanquish icy dream and wear the mask. Love the edge, the wound. Fuse a yearning. Dance over the bodies, liturgies of drama. Sacrifice, adore. Concentrate anger and tears. Suffer living. Escape like wind on sand covers broken midnight. The arms of all the ages, the waves in a storm destroy. The danger, the vertex, exists in the work and the moment of the kill. Fight anyone. Play Pythagorean music, throwing his heart at twilight where death sounds of spring, stains with blood, burns naked in religious sonnets. Raise towers of brick, tear apart chimeras, push into the flames, loose the stag wounded to death at the door, weeping tears of blood. So far from the green anemone crown, the altar. Roots flow dark and uncontrollable, depth, dark sounds, and the vast night remain. Here is the duende, a wind of the spirit, insistent over crushed grass.
Holy shit. Mamma mia. That's something. People are putting in their favorite lines in the chat. Heal a strange poem. Was that the line? Heal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a couple of notes liking that one. Well, this seems to have landed very well with you, I think.
Yeah, I had read the the essay before, like years and years ago,
Mhm.
and I came out of it thinking, well, that doesn't tell me what duende is. I couldn't penetrate it. And this time, um, I noticed, uh, I noticed his images and his examples.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, if I take those apart, that might get to the core of some kind of definition.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, so that's what I did.
Yeah, the abstractions and were so much earned by all the very visceral imagery in it. Such a great balance of that. Squeeze, dawn, open, wheel, razor, barren, moon, concentrate, anger, fight, anyone. I have this, first of all, you don't get away with a poem that doesn't have duende, you know?
Yeah,
It either has duende or not,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's very clear that this does, right? And it's very clear, when we have this course and we're talking about the ability to concentrate anger, the ability to transcend that anger, I think it's being able to concentrate it in a gesture that comes from a deeper place than the people that we're complaining about. So to say concentrate anger and then to say fight anyone, it's that kind of stance where
Mm.
maybe you're not a person who could fight anyone, but relating to that stance I think is critical. That's one of my fatal flaws. I don't back down. And
Ah,
when I heard that fight anyone, I thought I have that, and how do I apply it properly, right? Not by getting into fights, but by applying it in such a way that people are going to remember you and your work 90 years after your death, or whatever it's been since Lorca, 88 years, I guess,
mhm.
after your death. And to be able to give people a legacy like this essay that it seems to me you got a transmission of based on hearing this, right? Does it feel like that?
Yeah, it does. I started going through it and I just did it well in two goes, I guess, because there was it was sort of one day and then the next, but um it really all the parts that seemed crucial to what he was trying to say about duende, or what he was saying about duende, um it seemed like those just kind of popped out, little light shining around the word. And it was really fun. Um and
It's
and there,
funny, Lorraine, that like the section that you that I had picked it from, you know what I mean? I just picked from a little section, but how many words were in your poem that I had picked from, you
Mhm.
know what I mean?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, so weird. Like you said, there must have been a little spotlight or something on those sections.
Mhm.
There is a certain there's a lot of charged language in the essay. And in particular, there's lots of blood and gore as well. He talks about bullfighting and all that stuff, the what is he? It's in my poem. But something about the duende comes at the moment of the kill or something.
Yes.
And it's like, could we could we not have like blood and violence and killing cows and
Well,
but no, it's important because
yes,
it's so graphic, and that's how he communicates the the depth of it,
right.
because it is such an abstraction, the concept of duende, which I think is why I've always kind of struggled with it, and
It's supposed to be a struggle.
yeah, it's supposed to be a struggle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jennifer, yeah, the passion. He's so
yeah,
passionate.
yeah.
And so everything is passionate. The singing and the dancing and the um and the bullfighting and the lovers and dying and all of that kind of stuff.
The bullfight, a Spanish person told me, can be likened to an indigenous ritual. And I think when you look at it that way, it changes the tenor of it somewhat. I think you can look at it that and maybe not agree with it, but can say, okay, I see where you're coming from on that. I'm sorry you weren't able to share the erasure because I was at the Suzzalo Library
Mm,
looking at Ronald Johnson, and they
mhm.
just let you go up and say, here it is, find it in the stack. Here's a
Right.
where is it? Here it is. Because I said I want to reserve this, the shrubberies. So I go like this, and they say, "Oh, you go up there," and I'm like, I don't know, where the hell do I go? And I went to another places, and you go up there, and then you turn, and finally I found it, and I saw also Ronald Johnson's erasure of Paradise Lost,
Oh, wow.
and it's called Grady Os. Oh, I and I, you know, God, I wanted to steal those two books. I so wanted to just put them in my bag. And then they'd be whoop, whoop, look at this, poet busted for stealing books at the Suzzalo Library. So I was able to control myself. But I did I did take some photos, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm just looking again to see if I can
if you can, let me know. And then
yeah.
we can do this. So Paradise Lost becomes Radios, right? And then
Yeah.
the beginning of Milton, you have of man's, well, I can make this a little bit, of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe with loss of Eden till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed. In the beginning, how the heavens and the earth rose out of chaos, or if Sion Hill delight thee more, and Siloa's brook that flowed fast by the oracle of God, I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to soar above the Aeonian mount, while it purses things unattempted, yet in prose or rhyme. Radios. There's his, I could probably, yes, hang on, I'll get it. Hold on. There we go. A note and a dedication. Oh, and this is a great little bit of trivia. The type stands as is. The words are those of an 1892 edition of Paradise Lost I picked off a Seattle bookshop shelf on
Oh,
probably in that neighborhood I was in because he was a poet in residence at UW in 1973. After hearing Lucas Foss Baroque variations, so on and so forth, he goes on to explain. I would particularly like to thank Robert Duncan for his encouragement through my solitary quest in the cloud chamber. That place, he assured me, the authors are in eternity. San Francisco, 1976, 3 years after he was in Seattle. So very clearly. And then there's the erasure. So you can see in the background some of the words that of Milton's that were left. Oh, tree, into the world, man, the chosen, rose out of chaos, song.
yeah.
So that's what Ronald Johnson did with Milton. And then he's got some shorter things. This shows up in the workshop exercise, my journal entry. I was
There's
soul in process, meticulous detail, beyond the pale, 9 lifetimes, darkness praying, but light to four. So that's one of the shrubberies, which was his very last thing. In fact, I took pictures of his last poems. And he told his literary executor, Peter O'Leary, that manuscript needs a little pruning before you publish it. Shrubberies. Anyway, I'm glad you're on the erasure track. And I guess if I would have found that Ronald Johnson, if I'd have gone to the library a week before, I might have put that in. But you seem to have gotten inspiration from it. So that's my work. Lorraine, what a fucking powerful thing you did.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Okay, I think let me just see if I can share this one thing. Yeah, okay. I had to export it as a PDF from the thing. So there's what it,
Uh-huh. Yeah. So now wait a second. So you you white out and then just leave and then you kind of
well, I used gesso and I ended up having to the words kept bleeding through. So I went over it about, I don't know, 3 times and then it still showed through. So I decided, well, I'm scribbling it out. So I scribbled everything.
so can
There's
you read it
like,
to us?
what's that?
Can you read it to us?
Uh, yeah, well, okay, yeah. I'll have to make it bigger if I can, because some of it is, you can see maybe that there's stuff that it doesn't show up as well. Some of it's not on white.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of an underlying narrative. This one, green, open, open. This black snare, blood for blood, letter, the escape, author, that letter, alter the line, long narrative, solitary, secret, still read.
Fantastic. I love the whole thing is really really captivating, really compelling. Oh,
I yeah, I had such a it took, I don't know, months, I think. It was like a summer project and uh I took apart the oh, this one's sideways. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough. I've taken enough time. But it was so much fun. And so I had all the pages laid out and then I took the same cover and 2012, there it is. Um, and so it ended up, instead of being called The Heart of Midlothian, there was some kind of a subtitle. Oh, is that backwards in your screen?
very
Rose,
small. It's very small.
yeah, Rose Heart ends up being the title of it. And yeah, many afterwards remember time without sound, found silent. Anyway, there's one of the things is that with the style of writing in Scott's time, uh, there's lots of repetition, and it really that really fed into the how the poem came through, because you could have found, and there's one page where it's like, heart and solitary heart, and um, it has heart about 6 times on the page. So
Mhm.
of different, they were describing somebody and all different descriptors of heart. It was
Mhm.
quite neat. Yeah.
Matt Treese erased this apocalyptic text that was out of the same kind of spirit of the Rapture. What was that whole Rapture series? Uh, I forget what they call it.
Left behind.
Left Behind. Left Behind.
Right.
Mm.
The people who had the bumper sticker. If this car come the Rapture, this car will be unmanned. These bumper stickers.
Right.
And then in Port Townsend, they responded with their own bumper sticker that says, "When the Rapture comes, can I have your car?" And so this, so kind of this bumper sticker war, which of course I'm a correspondent of this whole
Yeah.
thing. So he was erasing parts of and his dad bought it. His dad is like told his boss, "Not going to be coming to work next week. The Rapture is going to be happening. I'll be up in a cloud somewhere saying hello from up there." Well, I don't know how he said. Of course, the Rapture didn't come.
Yeah.
Not that time anyway. After all, we have the Antichrist as president now, so we should prepare ourselves. Anyway, he's erasing these these parts of words. So whereas the text had heart or earth a lot, Matt Trees, his text, his erasure was filled with ears instead of heart. It was ear, and I love that idea. Just kind of
Yeah.
while you're erasing, take a letter off the beginning and
Yeah.
one off the end, and your heart becomes an ear. Which, of course, the ear is connected the same speed as the mind. How did Olson put it? Something like that. So, and then one other thing about all this Lorca stuff, because I wrote it down a couple of times, and I really want to get this across, is that I interviewed Jerome Rothenberg, who did a book called Lorca Variations,
Hmm.
and he took Lorca's words, he took all of Lorca's nouns, and then wrote poems with Lorca's nouns, and he was doing the Lorca variations. It's a really interesting Did you remember that? Was anyone in the class when I offered that? No, he's got here. Here it is. Oh my God. It used to be a white, it used to be a deep blue book, and now the sun gets it. Anyway, this book, the Lorca variations, because they were supposed to publish his translations, and they said no. And so, or no, I forget exactly what the story was, but he said, all right, well, I'll take my translations and I'll write new poems from them and I'll own them and you can't say anything about it. And he's got this, he's in a time of war and second New York poem. Let me just read you a little bit of that second New York poem because you can get a sense of the power that Lorca gives us, this intensity. I think it's kind of like, in a way, like a Catholic saint, You want your poetry to have some guts, to have some depth. Petition Lorca, right? And you'll get that. Second New York poem, page 80. Uh, um, Lorca Variations 33, second New York poem. The epigraph Federico Garcia Lorca, El Mascarón. Mira el mascarón como viene de Africa a New York. Look, the mask, look at the mask as it comes from Africa to New York. One, they are gone, the pepper trees. Half of it was sand, and what remained was mercury and made him tremble, too afraid to rub it in while visioning a hippopotamus who stalked through everlastings and other animals who crossed those endless bridges, whom he could bring down with a spear, their beaks grown dormant, their flesh nailed onto trees, from which he used to cut his masks, would wear his masks around New York, half crazy, wasn't he? The bright gazelle mask flashing where he walked. What joy to be among you at this gathering, he thought, to spend this time with you, here where the wheat rots, swans rut, camels plod among the peppers, in the mask that shows you fear, the mask dissolving into sand like solitude and ashes, where the light has died away so recently. The cat is playing with a cork, and all things come into this other light. The phosphorus ignites over New York, where death's a crocodile, and sunlight makes the world grow darker, where a sword cuts through my throat, my feet, where silence covers everything, where eyes turn white, where time turns inside out, like valleys rife with mutilated buds in Africa, inviting us to join their dance of death. Yeah. You have
Yeah.
to, you can't, like Lorraine, like you demonstrated, you're going to take on Lorca. You have to bring it. You have to bring it.
Yeah.
Such, such a powerful presence. Agreed, Scott. So there's some, because I did a quick search for this in the media library. I was searching for Lorca variations. So there's the preface to Lorca variations, and then on Rothenberg's variations, and then I guess I have it twice in there. But those are resources I've had for this or past classes, and I wonder if I could just dump them into the chat like that. Let me see if I could. No, it might be. Well, I don't know if you're interested in them. Let me see if I can. No, I don't think. No, I would have to. What I'd have to do is just get the URL. If I can. Oops. Let me see if I could do that. Yeah. So there's the introduction and yeah, that's what I have to do. So copy it on the clipboard and then we go. Okay, very good. Lauren, I'm sorry you have to follow that, but I have faith in you as a cleanup hitter. So I'm sorry I didn't. I hope, Christ, I hope
Oops.
you always deliver. For what am I worried about, for crying out loud? What? Now you muted yourself again. Your retort was muted. You're still muted. I would like for you to unmute you. There we go. Okay.
This might be the week that I disappoint.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a strange week. I've felt very sort of pulled in so many different directions, so hard to focus. Um, what I did get into during the week was the bracket fungus, the, the bracket fungus steersman, and I also had to read it several times and kind of refer back to things and look at the platter, the picture of the platter that Charles Edenshaw had carved. And there is this kind of strange connection that it's like this strange thread that in my life that Charles, so my I think I've mentioned this before, my first cousin once removed, her great great grandmother was Isabella Edenshaw.
Mm.
So that's kind of in there somewhere. Um, and Colin Brown, like I thought, how is it I've never heard of him before, you know? So I was really glad to have to take the time to read and reread what he had written there, so that I could really appreciate more of what he had to offer. Um, there was I've highlighted a quote here that is to me is this is the Duende, where he's talking about the carving on the platter and the bracket fungus steersman with those big eyes, and he says, signaling with his eyes that he no longer has control over the canoe or over his own life. A premonition of death, or is it a little death? Orgasm, right? And I thought, well, that's kind of, yeah, to me, that there it is, right? No control over, no control over our death. And we like to think there's some control over our life, but um, yeah. So I'll just name one of the distractions to get it out of the way for me. Speaking of no control over my life, our neighbor decided to replace part of a fence that we had used to build this beautiful, I mean, Ted built this beautiful bamboo fencing with, we sourced bamboo from a warehouse in Vancouver. It was pieced together with cedar on either side, like massive panels, 6, 7 foot panels that were attached to this old fence. And the new neighbor, bless him, decided to replace that old fence, which meant we had to take down those panels. And now there's this very lovely cedar Western style fence, horizontal, that is
You need,
totally messed with
do you
the
need me to
Japanese
you need me to
garden
rough
fence.
somebody you need me to rough somebody up?
Yeah, yes. So I'm just going to name that because I realize, as I'm sitting here trying to sort of take in what everyone is saying, and I just realize how that's distracted me, that sort of the sort of grief over this, we really don't have control over things. And this was a creation.
How did
Oh,
Ted take it?
okay.
No, no, how did Ted take it?
Uh, Ted was much easier with it. And I mean, we're talking an enormous amount of work. To build it, to take it down, these things weighed a ton. We're lugging them around. He just rolls with it.
Hmm.
He amazes me. Even today, when he digging in new holes, new posts. Oh,
For the
sorry.
fence. For the fence.
Anyway, for the fence, for a change in our fence.
Are you
Anyway,
gonna are you gonna slap up that fence, that old fence against their new fence? Is that what you're gonna do?
no, we can't. that doesn't work in the relationship with the neighbor. I wouldn't, yeah, I would put the relationship with the neighbor as more important than that part of the fence.
I see.
That's my priority. So not to labor this point, but back to the bracket fungus
Yes.
steersman. And this amazing figure in the back of the canoe. I think I'll just open the page. That page.
I've got it too.
Did you have it open
I,
on
well, no,
116?
I've got the cover of Colin Brown's book.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
the one?
Yeah, look at it. Look at that. The flat face and those big eyes and the teeth. Um,
He's going to go out and have a smoke after this, I think.
yeah. So there's another line that he says if he's about that bracket fungus, if he's meant to be a newborn, he's a menace to his mother, but he has no mother. Like,
Mother fungus.
mother fungus. So this whole idea that there is no beginning of time, there is only transformation. Um, to me, that's speaking to that. If he's a menace to his mother, but he has no mother. Very cool stuff. Um, yeah, I think also I was just so much appreciating the humor and the celebration and power of female sexuality that Colin Brown was talking about when he's describing the bracket fungus steersman. And it got me to thinking about, what have I learned in my time and what have I read about? Well, there's Medusa and her head of snake. There's Eve biting the apple, and sin is born. It's just such a different shtick.
But isn't the world ready for a new story?
Yes, well, that's what's happening, isn't it? It's
I think
the
so. I think very much is what is happening. Yes.
yeah, it's the falling apart. It's the chaos out there. And then next, I mean, this I think is part of a transformation. And so this challenge of how to not hold the chaos inside me,
Or the anger, or the concentrate the anger.
to maybe name the anger,
Mhm.
but the chaos is a real thing, and to see it as part of transformation, I think is helpful for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Isn't that a Buddhist and indigenous thing?
yeah, yeah. I like this. I like the strangeness and humor of the indigenous. That really appeals to me.
I mean, that's classic. The whole Fungus Man thing is classic. Entering Time, The Fungus Man Platters of Charles Edenshaw is the book by Colin Brown. So I recommend it very, very highly.
Okay, yeah. Entering time. Yeah, no wonder that resonates. So I'll read a very rough poem, just to sort of. This is kind of where I was. It's rough. What can I say? It's rough. Um, Here we go. Share. Okay, let's get. Have you got everything else on your? Here, let's get out of that.
We can see it very clearly.
And you okay? Bowls and spoons and the paradox of creation. Raven, in the fact of being born, brings into existence his own mother. Wilson Duff, December 24th, 1973, excerpt from a letter to Lilo Berliner. What the Edenshaws were up to, ravens speak to bear's mouth, the paradox of creation. Wilson thought he had finally cracked the code. No beginning of time, just now, pierce, engulf. Meanwhile, asleep in the dream temple, Asclepius, she, her, incubated another origin story. Who placed that snake on her belly? Get it off, get it off. But the spirits speak contraries in the temple of snake screams. She winds in that slick ball of wool and takes death of what? Into her own hands, weaves an irregular pentagon-shaped dream catcher, then holds it aloft. Athena with severed head of Medusa on her shield, writhing. Meanwhile, the fingers of that pentagon have taken on the fool's role in the king's court. Perhaps a higher power can place snakes on their guiding center. Symbol for the self, said Jung. Young women, their batikked dresses soaked in blood in foreign countries. Menzies, flood, drowned, red. Said, two in the afterlife of Wilson's bowl. Haida? Certain words creosote chimney tongues, saying yes when we really mean no, or yes, no. A morning to circle the goat bowl, oats soaked, not sowed, flax oil, roasted pumpkin seeds for the prostate. April 19th, 2025, Aries the ram turns 67, not in love with the hand of creation. Lady's mantle in the garden, Alchemilla vulgaris, force of the womb, palms up leaves to collect the dew. Undigested plant matter blackens the field. Weeds galore, riotous holy women kick up their heels in dandelions' noetic tract. Dogs bark and gnaw on bones. Lilo, Berliner, we hardly knew ya. Morning swims in the Salish Sea, a black-capped chickadee, 3 whistles, 3 steps down.
We should all have poems that are so rough.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful. Reading that last stanza, I just want to weep.
Yeah.
I just picture this woman who I know really very little about walking into the sea.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Okay, it's gorgeous. Anyone want to chime in? I'm kind of at a loss for words myself. So if you just want to say it instead of putting it in the chat.
There's something, it's not exactly the same, of course, but in one of the poems, the bowl poem, by Phyllis Webb, it ends not similarly, but there's an echo there. Blackbird pecks at her ear, pushes through to nest in her brain. She hears heavy feathers twice, once as riffs on a drum, once as a blackbird sigh.
Oh, cool.
And in that, yeah.
Thanks for pointing that out. That's
Yeah, that's close reading. That's fantastic. I love that callback. Lorraine, Aaron, you want to chime in?
I just found there was almost in almost every stanza there was a concept or an image that really was quite vivid and that you kind of gave a twist to. Like there was the snakes and there was something about weaving or something like that, and just like there were these familiar symbols that you brought in, and then it's like you turned them and juxtaposed them in a really fresh way. I felt really present throughout almost the whole thing.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. Poems, not all yours, beautiful. Struck me the contrast with what I was hearing last night. It's like there's so much life in these, there's so I can hang out with them. There's something new in every line and the juxtaposition of line. And I mentioned to you not too long ago that I love the music that you bring in. Your ear is just really a treat. I just love the music in your writing. But again, it's just like, I can hang out with what we are doing here. It's another world altogether from what is is presented in what people say, oh, I'm going to write a poem. I can give you a poem. Like it's really heartwarming.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful poem, Lauren. Thank you.
Here are 38 things I hate about Trump poem. I think, Scott, that's a great point. Um, first of all. Second of all, our presence in events like the one you described might be to give them an example of what a real poem is. And, we all have to start somewhere, I guess. And, you know, it's a real challenge to come into that space and not say, look, man, I got a fucking MFA from the University of British Columbia MFA program. I mean, to come in there and say, here's my contribution. I'm part of this community that's here tonight, and I'm just going to read my thing. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, well, we have opportunities like this where we're going to be amongst those who takes this act as seriously as you do, which is, I think, part of what it is you're taking issue with. That someone who writes a poem on a napkin as their partner is driving the car to the reading is not giving us the same service as someone who reads one week of course materials and who sits down and hears other things and is inspired by Lorca, is inspired by Fungus Man, is inspired by Phyllis Webb, and somehow fuses all those things together into one duende rich moment of time, this 3-page or this 2-page poem or whatever it is, that each line break, the whole lineation of it has a careful, there's a reason for it. There's a method to it all. It illustrates a mastery. So it's really not fair in one way. And in another way, it's a great lesson in compassion to go there. And not to say, well, I'll show them how good poetry can be, but to be there as part of a community and just to do your thing. And the chances are, there may be one or two people whose lives you totally change. Something opens up in them. Maybe just mentioning the word duende or Wilson's Bowl or Phyllis Webb or whatever might be that thing that cracks them open and changes their path so that it's 1 degree that way, but in 20 years, it's something way different than where they would have been. And it's getting more and more difficult because we're entering a post-literate time. Throw in whatever emoji you want to express that notion.
There's that commitment, right? There's that commitment, and what you were saying about commitment to beauty. I mean, that's part of commitment to poetry. It seems to me, and also what Emily was saying about grappling. It's such a great word, grappling, because you can be using your ropes in a technical climb but and it's the angel wrestling with whatever that image is of wrestling angels. And I just think people uh people like to be lyrical, and there's a certain kind of style, and so that comes across to a lot of people as being, that's what poetry is. It's this lovely descriptive description of a moment or something. And this sort of leads into Wilson Duff. I studied with Wilson Duff in 77, and I learned so much about he deconstructed Haida art and went through all the um the stylistic uh, elements of the art, and I learned how to actually look at those things and understand what they were. Um, and um, and it wasn't until quite a bit later that I learned that he had committed suicide. And at the time, I was also dealing with a suicide that happened to someone quite close to me, and it still comes up. So in Phyllis Webb's poem of the Twin Masks, you know, it's sort of it's there hovering in the background because of the location of the bowl and all the things that are associated with it, like Lilo Berliner. And um, it's such a, there's such a resonance to that act of taking one's own life, I think, that, um, and people who commit suicide don't, they have no way of understanding before they do it how much it affects everyone around them. They, you know, there's all kinds of analysis about why and what people are thinking and so on and so on. But in the end, it's uh, it comes down on everyone else in such a profound way. And so that, you know, part of the grappling, say Phyllis Webb grappling with these twin masks, those beautiful, beautiful masks, um, is, you know, it's like, could a woman have made them? And it's like, yeah, quite likely a woman did, you know, just given what they are and this and then, but because of her immediate context, there's this whole resonance of someone who died deliberately at their own hand, you know, um, I don't know, it's sort of, it's one of those things that I get all teary about.
I'm feeling it as well. That you studied with him is amazing. Do you know that? Did you read the biography about him that came out a couple of years ago about Wilson Duff?
No, I haven't. I remember seeing that it came out, but I
Yeah,
haven't read it yet.
yeah,
He was
I
an amazing guy.
highly recommended. But let's look at the theme. Let's look at the theme here. And I didn't even think about this. Didn't really put it together. On some level, I did, but it wasn't conscious of it. Duende is present. When Duende is present, there is the possibility of death,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, what are we talking about? Lilo Berliner walks into the sea there. Phyllis Webb, who gets the letters delivered on her doorstep. What do I do with this? She writes a book called Wilson's Bowl. She create this bowl. These bowls that are around the island may have been mythic before, but that Wilson's Bowl certainly is mythic now because of Phyllis Webb's action. And
yeah,
Lilo Berliner takes her own life. Wilson Duff he's at his office at UBC. He calls security, says, I need you to come to my office right now.
yeah,
Puts down the phone and shoots himself in the head. And they've got to come. And I mean, that's traumatic to come there. Moments ago, the guy was live calling you there, and then he's dead on his desk. But what does it indicate? It indicates that there's Duende happening. That doesn't mean if you keep reading Lorca, whatever, you're going to shoot yourself in the head. It just illustrates the gravity of what's going on. And we're living in a time where the gravity of what's going on, these people in the United States being disappeared, this guy, a DoorDash driver who came into the country during Biden administration, completely legal, went on the app on his phone, said, I want asylum because of what's happening in Venezuela, gets in, takes the shittiest job imaginable, delivering Big Macs to the assholes who eat them, like the president, and makes a wrong turn in Detroit and ends up in Windsor and comes back and has disappeared. He's not in the prison in El Salvador. They don't know where he is. They last heard from him March 15th. How is this kind of stuff happening in North America? It boggles the mind. But many of these things we have taken for granted for a long time. And it's time to start, thanking for the little things that we have. My voice, for instance, I was in radio for 26 years. You don't think about it until you got some, what do they call it when you can't speak? What's that thing that happened?
aphasia,
Say again?
aphasia.
No, when you can't
Oh,
talk, your voice goes away from
Probably laryngitis.
right.
laryngitis. You have laryngitis, like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to speak again. I'm a radio guy. It's death. Holy shit, So from then on, every day to give thanks. I have a voice. I can use it. I'm grateful for that. Every now and then I need a Hall's mentholyptus to make sure I can still get it across. But this is so fascinating that you talk about Duende, Wilson Duff, Lilo Berliner, Phyllis Webb. They understood the gravity of that gesture. So how it all comes together is amazing. And it comes together because we can see this through the eyes of everybody that's here in the room. And what you do with it's amazing. And Lauren, that's not a rough poem. That's a perfection, if you ask me. That's really stunning and amazing. And I hung on every angle of that poem. Brilliant.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
work tonight, just consistently brilliant. I'm so glad I recorded it. So we have it as a document, and we're out on time. Holy cow. We still have a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to hang in the room. Oh, there is one thing I wanted to show you is that I have the materials up already. Let's go to browser. Let's make sure we got the page up, and hold on here. Where's the not going to give me the navigation? I guess the nav bar is over here. Okay. Workshops. Okay. Poetics as Cosmology. There we go. So week 1 was there. Antardo seems so long ago, doesn't it?
Yes.
So long ago. Holy cow. She comes up this week. Malatismo. It has the new record by Third Coast Percussion playing in Seattle on May 3rd. I don't think it's sold out, just in case anyone wants to come for it. There's the trailer for their new record. Week 4, which we just had. And then week 5. Okay. Cascadian Zen, Volume 2, pages 124 to 148. It's a large hunk because of Barbara John's essay, but her essay reads really well, and those pages don't have a lot of text on them. Against Forgetting, the complete introduction to this anthology about poems written by Poetry of Witness. You can see this is Richard Osler's copy. He donated to us before he died. So I scanned
Is that Carolyn Forche? Is that her?
It's Carolyn Forche's book.
Yeah, right.
And so that's the introduction. Then there's a little lighter thing, Waterfall Zen. There's extra credit if you do the Waterfall Zen, just letting you know. And then we're this little plug for the Poetry Postcard Fest and for a day song on or around September 1st. Here's a couple of the day song workshop suggestions. And then this is the exercise. Good, it came up. So Coyote Dung and Pomegranate Blossoms, Issei Zen. That's the name of the essay. Essay. And talking about, Japanese verse 575. Of course, I say you don't have to do the 575. I counted the days. I hope that's accurate. 94 days today of Trump being in office. And then asking you to bring in short verse. You can do the 575 if you want. You have an epigrammatic poem if you want. You can do a Tonka 57577. Other short forms, American sentences. See, Emily, you have that prophetic sense going. Of course, you know that I write one every day, and most of them are not worth publishing. Sing Kane, 24682, 5-line poems. It's kind of interesting to work with. You can work with the Antardo sevens. And then these are poems that I found today in the shrubberies. This is one here, this is one here, and this is one here. Incurved rays, pure white lily, inscient of days, hard by the sea to thread maize, ripe to seize. And wind rolled beyond borders, whirl calf rope, bull toss cape astride, arena half calm, half incipient cataclysm, and the always revisiting mind all revising yet another vision. You might want to create a form of your own. You might want to write them by hand outside in your pocket journal. You can add some graphics or at least some color to the page on which you write, which I did, piercing that skull in the eye. And the Canadian stamp, is that a Canadian stamp in the corner there? No, that's Argentina. There's a Canadian stamp right there. Look at that. valor. As Canada begins to ramp up military spending to not be dependent on the United States, that valor is going to be a lot more important. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. We're excited. All the links, they are live. It's now live on the same page that we're on. So you have your marching orders for next week. What a joy and honor it is to be here with you like this. I'm going to miss you after next week. I hope that I'll see you in other ways. And good things are coming from this organization. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed to the list, make sure you do that. We have Giving Tuesday coming up. So if you're in the chips now and can help us out, we could use it. It's now we've got like 4 people depending on us for money, which is a little scary for me. So the stakes have never been higher, but the work that we're doing has never been more amazing. We're doing all kinds of things. Cascadia BioFi on the 17th. We're part of a neighborhood walk the block on May 24th. And Elliott Bay Books on May 1st for Winter in America again. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this work. And thank you for your intense and beautiful work today.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, see you next week.